Welcome back to another episode of Suckcessfull, the podcast.
I'm one of your hosts, Blake, and joining me,
I'm one of your other hosts, Justin.
And this is the podcast all about the not so subtle truth about success and
the art of sucking less in pursuit of it. Let's not waste any more time and get right to the show.
Justin, this is our 15th episode. Can you believe that?
You know, it feels like our 30th.
Oh, man. I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, it has. What for me has always been so fun with these is that it went from concept to reality really quick. And now we're already on episode 15. It blows me away.
Well, it's funny. I don't think we've ever told our audience this, but when we initially were talking about starting a podcast, we were just joking about it. But I think we were literally joking about it and then recording like 4 days later.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I thought today we'd kind of, open the curtain a little bit. We're 15 in, so let's give them a little bit of a look behind the curtain. How did we start this and expand upon us a little bit so that we can then dive even further into this? So I think the concept probably came up about 2 months before we recorded. We hinted back and forth. You were talking about starting a podcast. You were asking how to do it, all those kind of things. And then the way I remember it is you brought it up and I'm like, let's do it. And you're like, what? And I swear it was probably, 4 or 5 days later, we were in it. We had the logo. We haven't changed the background at all. We have stuck with it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And it was funny because I don't remember what we were talking about specifically, but it was a very interesting topic that we kind of digressed on from whatever it was we were talking about. And then I was like, we could have had a podcast. And then you're like, we should have a podcast. And I was like, wait, what? Wait, are you being serious? Or are you joking? And you were like, I'm serious.
No, I'm being 100% serious because part of the validation of this is when I was in LA, I played it for a couple people that hadn't heard it at all, whatever. And they were blown away by the candor of us and just the way we interact and how natural it seemed and how fun it was. They're like, I don't even care about business because these are artsy fartsy people. They're like, I'll listen all the time now. And it was just fun having that validation because I've always been intrigued by our conversations. And it's nice to explore these topics, to see where we can take it in a real way, but also have fun, and kind of learn about each other along the way.
That's awesome. Actually, you didn't tell me that story yet. So I'm just hearing it for the first time on air.
Well, I have to hold it. You can't, just like everything else, we can't go full kimono all the time. There's got to be things you hold back a little bit to drop those breadcrumbs as we go.
That's true. That's true. Well, that's awesome, though, that they like the show. I've been getting a lot of great feedback as well. So that's been fun.
It has. And it's been listening to us. So I think I texted you the other day. I was listening to our probably episode 12, 11, something like that when this aired. Anyways, I loved it. And not that I don't love all our episodes, but it was fun to, if you listen to episode 1 to even episode 12, it's fun to see our progression. It's really cool. Here's a little further behind the curtain here. So we recorded this Greg episode a month and a half ago, probably something like that. I've listened to it several times and we've even grown since then. It's a great interview. We are great in it. And Greg is a great guest, but it's funny because I think that we have every episode we get better and better.
I agree with you. And it's funny because I even said, I think after our last episode, which was the one about anxiety and overthinking and all those things, we always afterwards are like, what'd you think? But on that one in particular, I was like, man, that one was not what I expected. And you at first were like, wait, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I was like, no, it was great because we took everybody through the journey that we were currently on. And I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about their obstacles and things, they come back to it. It's like a discussion after the fact. And I thought that was cool because it gives a different perspective.
I could not agree more. And I think what I've really enjoyed about this is just the comfort level, right? Like you don't have a very good comfort with each other. So it's not like I ever feel like I'm on edge because, there's some people you talk with and you're like, I'm not going to tell you anything more. Like you have those walls up and everything else. But I feel like it's very natural. And I think our audience is picking up on it that we're able to be our true selves here, which is, it feels like a very safe space. And so what I'm excited about is having some more guests on and also exploring the list of topics we have. I'm going to add, I think, 3 more today that I thought up last night, but we're well into the 40s or 50s at this stage of the game. So we have years worth of content left.
Yeah, we have a lot. And there's a couple too, I think the 2 that I had talked to you about yesterday, I haven't added yet. So yeah, we definitely have some awesome topics. And what's cool is they all sort of intertwine for the most part, but each one, there's enough there to just have a full episode on. And sometimes I've noticed that in our episodes too, I'll be like, this is a whole different episode. But while we're on the topic, let me make this point real quick.
And again, it feels, I guess it feels natural with those moments, though. It doesn't feel like forced. Sometimes I listen to podcasts and I feel like they're reading off a script almost. It doesn't feel genuine. Here's the analogy I'll use because I have this text chain with a bunch of old friends. And about 2 weeks ago, they started talking about jury duty. Have you seen the show Jury Duty?
I've heard about it. I haven't watched it.
Okay. I feel like there's so much content out there, like my head's going to pop. But when I figure like they were all talking about it, saying you have to watch it, whatever, it's hysterically funny. I mean, it is stupidly, it is what I really picture being a jury on. So basically the premise is that you've got one person who doesn't know it's a joke and everyone else in it's an actor. So there's a juror in there who really thinks he's a juror and everyone else is an actor or actress in there, even the plaintiffs and everything. It is the defendants, everyone. It is hysterical what happens in there. You can see this really happening in a courtroom and all the things that go on. Anyways, I say that because that was like for the first time in a long time, I've watched something that felt genuine. You know, like it felt like this could really be, I can actually see this happening. It didn't feel scripted, didn't feel forced. And I feel like that was my long way of saying, I feel like in some ways we're like Jury Duty, but we're both in on it.
I have to watch that show because I think you're the fifth or sixth person who's brought it up. I've heard only good things. But yeah, I agree with you. And the other thing too is I listen to a lot of podcasts and they're either not long enough, it's like bite-sized topics because the person's busy and can only put out that level of content, or it's surface level and it doesn't get into any of the real aspects of it. And that's always bothered me, especially with like the success or motivation and inspirational type podcasts, or it's the same like 6 questions with just a different guest. You know what I mean? And that,
yes,
I think it's great to have somewhat of a formula in terms of obviously you want to stay on topic of what your podcast is about. But I feel like if you're bringing on guests, you should be tailoring to that guest because that guest has valuable insight that they can share, but you have to ask the right questions, as you like to say.
And it's true though, right? And I think it's funny looking back when we first started this in the last year, I've started 2 podcasts and it's very funny because one of them is none of this has been aired yet, but anyway, it's basically, we review movies and it's really funny because it's 3 dudes that just have totally different views on movies. And the first episode, you could just tell one of the guys frozen. I mean, he's so terrified to be on camera because he's a director. And so he's used to being behind the scenes and he's just like, uh-huh. I'm like, come on, bring it out, whatever. You know, it was just funny to watch. It's kind of a fun one. Anyways, I bring it up because with this, it felt very natural to start. And then it was funny because you were slightly more nervous at the beginning. And now I think you're even more comfortable than I am. It's
You
very
think?
cool. Well, you definitely portray it that way. I'll tell you that much. You come on. So for those that don't, I mean, we haven't ever showed you how we set up before this, but usually we get on, we talk for 3-4 minutes and we dive right into it. I mean, Blake will, she's got her tea or coffee right there. She's got her headphones on. She's got her makeup. She is like set to go for the day. And I'm just like, you set the bar high already. All right. Because we record early in the day. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Okay. So you've raised the bar every time for me.
Well, that's good then. That helps each other grow. Well, I will tell you in the beginning, I didn't expect to be nervous. That's what threw me because I started in the entertainment industry as an actor. But there's a difference between being yourself on camera and being someone else. And that was a very quick realization. If we do the promos, I'm still like, what do I say? That's why I asked you when we did our promo for Greg. I was like, what are we going to talk about? So not as confident all the time as it may come across, but I got that face of steel, that Capricorn face.
Yeah, you've got the stoic faces, right? It's not even the steel face, right? Because steel seems hard. It's not hard. It's a confident face. So it's stoic. I will say that it is, I think, even if we don't talk, it just goes naturally, is where I'm going with this. It's funny because I listened to, I think it was episode 5. I was trying to listen to a couple of them as we prepared for this one. I think it was 4. Anyways, and it was funny to listen because it was at one point where you could almost tell you were like, I was talking so long, I forgot what my point was. And you were kind of like bringing it back. And I kind of jump in, you're like, and you can just see in your face, like, okay, that's what it was, and you do the same thing to me later on the episode. And it was fun to watch because it was like, all right, that is a team right there. Like that, instead it's a good, like almost improv, like it's a yes and kind of moment as opposed to, hey, I don't want to call you out here, but you really effed up that scene there.
Yeah, sometimes I do that, or I'll I'll be so excited. And that's why I write down sometimes the topics, because I'll focus on one thing and then you'll bring up a different topic. And then my brain's like, oh, that. And then I'll forget the first thing. So now every time I take notes, because I've learned that I will forget the last three topics and only remember the fourth one if I don't write them down. But yes, I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, where was I going with this? It still sounds okay, I guess.
I sound really intelligent. I don't know what I'm saying, but I sound really intelligent right now. I think we all go there. And I will say that what I've learned from you is I've always done this. I never, especially before I do interviews or podcasts, whatever, I don't ever go in with a script, and I'll have points that I'll remember beforehand. Like I'll review them the night before and usually 5 minutes before I go on. And then I just let the conversation go, because what I find is when I was an actor, I could memorize lines. I was great at that. But the moment I got stuck and couldn't remember the line, like it would be like obsessive to me. And I'd be like, I don't remember that. And like I'd get stuck in my head. So what I do here is it's fun because you'll come in with kind of like a little outline. I have an outline in my mind. And so what I do is I'll listen to what you're saying and then I'll pull the point off there and kind of go with where I thought I could go with it. And then you bring it back. It's kind of fun to watch that, because I know most people probably don't catch this, but like I can see sometimes when you're looking at your notes, like you look down, and it's fun because I'm like, okay, all right, she's either jotting a point down or she's trying to tie that together. So it's fun for me to watch that, because our first probably two, I would keep my phone over here on the notes section and I would look at it. Now I look at it beforehand and I try not to, because I'm much more natural when I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. See, for me, like my brain's always going a million miles an hour. So if I don't keep myself semi-organized, I will forget the points, or like I'll start talking halfway through, forget the point, and then come back to it 6 points later.
Again, for successful people, I think that's very normal. What worries me, the part that I always struggle with, is like when I meet someone and they take forever to digest what you're saying. There's like this awkward, super long pause, and you expect like something profound to come out, and it's another question. You're going, I've never dealt well with that. And it's very interesting, because I always wonder sometimes what it's like to listen to this show for the first time, because if this is your first episode you're ever listening to it, welcome. But the banter is really fast. You do sometimes, like I listen to most podcasts at 2.5 or 2, times speed. I listen to ours at 1.5 because I'm like,
we do talk fast. I also edit really fast because I don't have a long attention span.
But again, that's what makes it work. That's what I love about it, because I don't either. And I hate, like we talked about, awkward pauses or those like, just get to the damn point. That is something that I appreciate. And I think that it's fun to, like we had talked about a few minutes ago, like that safe space. Like it's fun to be able to talk about these concepts, because we don't usually. Being raw, being real, and being open to those things is really interesting. And I was talking with a client of mine on Tuesday, and it was really funny because he's a doctor in the Philippines, and he's basically trying to do like Doctors Without Borders kind of thing. He mentioned one of our episodes. It was very interesting to hear this, because basically his point was that like we were talking about what he was going through, and he said it felt really good to hear someone else say it. It was very interesting the way he said it. He was like, it was kind of shy when he brought it up. He's like, yeah, I've listened to your podcast and I'm always getting nervous. I'm like, well, good or bad? And he's like, good. And I was like, all right. He's like, so, I've been, we've been talking about this decision I really want to make. It's hard to get into, especially if you're a foreigner, which I did not know. I didn't know Doctors Without Borders was hard to get into if you weren't US. Anyways.
Really? That's weird.
It's totally weird. Well, because they have certain medical requirements. I don't really know the whole gist of it, but basically they only accept certain types of schooling, which I mean, I don't know. I don't want to get into all that, but if you're a doctor, I think it's good. Anyways, he was going through this whole, like, he's having a lot of trouble with this in some areas. He's very successful in his where he practices, but getting into this program has been just an absolute bitch. And like 20 interview, like it's just been insane. And so he was kind of feeling like stuck and not deflated, but more just kind of angry at the situation. We had brought up something. He didn't mention the episode, but he said we were talking about something, and it really like brought back to him like, that is why I'm doing this, kind of that remembering of stuff. And he said it's really helped him. So that to me, really, that was kind of like gas in the tank for this. Like, I was like, hell yeah, we are badass.
That's awesome. Well, that's part of why I wanted to start this too, was to help other people through this process. And it's an ongoing process too. Oftentimes, like with my other content, a lot of my subscribers and things reach out to me and they're like, when does it stop? And I'm like, it doesn't stop. It just changes. But, once you get more, I guess, comfortable with that process of it, it's a little less scary. But it does help to have that community of people who are like, listen, that's normal. This is normal. This will happen. It'll suck. You'll get over it. It'll be fine. Like,
yeah. Yes. I think the hard part, especially when you're going through it, though, is that what you said right there, though, is that you feel like there's not necessarily an ending there, or it's not the ending that you wanted. I think being open and talking about it as the evolution of things is kind of fun, because a good example is I have a friend here that they just moved back from Australia. Really, really nice people. And it's funny because they're in the situation where they're living at a friend's house and they finally found a house. They're doing all this stuff. Their son is at a camp with one of my kids and just the sweetest kid, super nice. But he's having a hard time because he's been in Australia for so long, relating to a US kind of cultural thing, even though he's a US citizen and stuff. He's lived there for, I think, 3 years or whatever. And he's younger. So he's really developed a lot of those traits and stuff like that. Some of the kids are like, man, it's cool because he says like, g'day, like it's funny. But and some of the other kids are kind of punks about it. Why do you talk funny, stupid stuff that you're like, that still exists? I think that it just helps remind me that even regardless of where you are in your journey, someone's always going to say something stupid to you. There's always going to be someone who says something just absolutely asinine. You can't do that. Or why do you do that? Just shut up. And it's hard when you're going through it. Like yesterday, he was just talking briefly. His mom brought all the kids home and I was asking him, hey, how's your day today? And they were saying, well, so-and-so did this. And I was like, what a bastard. At this super young age, I forget. I picture like people always picture kids as innocent. They are not. They're products of what other people say and they pick up on it. Same thing with human beings. I think that part of what's really fun with this is that we call that stuff out here and we say, look, that is going to happen. Because a lot of the times we put our rose-colored glasses on and we look forward and we say, this is tough, but I'm going to put my boots on today and today is going to be better. Sometimes today isn't better, but tomorrow may be. Owning it and not fighting it and just accepting it for being, okay, it's a tough day, but I'm still going to make progress. I'm still going to move forward and I'm going to try to tune out those voices of other people that are either plaguing me in a negative way or dissuading me or doubtful or whatever adjective you want to use there. I think that's really helpful. And so that's the kind of stuff I love that we explore because it honestly helps me sometimes too, because I'll go back and listen to episodes and I'll be like, man, I can't believe I said that. Or I can't believe she said that. It's so funny to me. I think of you as so wise sometimes. And it's so funny because it'll just roll off the tongue. When you listen to it, you're just like, da-da-da-da. And I'll listen to it. I'm like, man, Blake, you are a sage.
I guess part of that's my calling because some of the other stuff I do. But what I was going to say was, I think as social media has become more prominent, and don't get me wrong, there's some really great things about social media, but especially like in the early 2000s, social media was very all about appearances, especially Instagram in particular. Everything had to be perfectly curated, all that type of stuff. And I think that kind of made us lose some community there and lose some self-awareness and some, like it almost isolated us more in a weird way because we felt like we had to be perfect all the time when that's not really
real,
something that can happen. Yeah. I think that's part of the issue. And then as things have continued to change, it's gotten better. But I think sometimes we still sort of get caught up in this sort of projection of what we're putting out to the world versus what's really going on. And that's part of why I think this podcast is very poignant because we do talk about those things. We do bring them up and we bring the attention back to it. And what you're talking about with your client feeling they were stuck and whatever, that lack of isolation in that really helps having other content that's out there saying, listen, sometimes stuff just sucks. Like sometimes shit just hits the fan. Sometimes you just feel like everything that you did was worth nothing, even though that's not true. And it's not true, but you feel it's true. And so therefore it is in that moment. And sometimes it's just how it is. But it's useful to have that content because I know when I'm going through things, sitting there listening to everyone being rainbows and sunshine does nothing but piss me off.
Absolutely. And it also feels so fake, right? Like it feels like you talked about with social media, but it feels like a facade. Okay, you're just such a weird person. We both know somebody who is perpetually positive and there's a time for it and a place for it. But to always be that way, I think is unhelpful. To always see the good in things is important, but not necessarily at the time is the way I look at it. Because like we had talked about many times in this podcast, and I think even you did right now, when you're going through it, it's okay to not see it as a lesson, as a barrier until you're ready to see it as something else. Because I think what happens is a lot of times we get caught up in, and I know I'm guilty of this all the time, is that I tell myself, okay, there's something supposed to learn from this lesson here. But that isn't necessarily helpful at the time. I've got to figure out a way around that. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, that was a lesson. But I think a lot of the teachings and a lot of the way people look at this is we've got to move forward. You've got to accept it as a lesson, have faith, all those kind of things. But what happens is I think that you question your faith more and you do all these other kind of things if you don't accept it first, go through it, and then reflect on it.
I agree. And one thing that I think is cool about our podcast too is we don't give one solution or one way around things. When you're faced with an obstacle, let's just say it's a mountain. You can either choose to climb the mountain and go completely over it. You could drill through the mountain. You could try to dig under the mountain. You could go around it, or you could just completely avoid it altogether and be like, fuck that. And I think we do a good job. Yeah. I think we do a good job of giving those different circumstances, giving different examples, and then allowing people to sort of choose the one that fits best for their current situation. And I like that a lot because a lot of other podcasts or a lot of other content's like, you have to do it like this. And it's like, well, sometimes that just doesn't work.
Absolutely. And what I love about it is in our tagline there, the art of sucking less. There's a reason there's multiple solutions is because we've tried the other way. We found all these different solutions because we've been there, we've done it, or we have at least seen someone go through it. The whole idea is, it's not a one size fits all. Sometimes there's a square peg and a round hole and you're going, this isn't going to work. You've got to have the right tool for the opportunity. And you've also got to be open to the idea that this may not be the right solution. So what else is out there? And I think the other piece of it too, that for me, I enjoy, this is the highlight for me, is that we laugh about a lot of this stuff too, right? Even the serious stuff, it's fun. Yesterday, I was on a hike, I started in the morning here because the kids go back to school in 3 weeks. And I was like, look, let's get in the best shape before you go back to school. And of course, they grumbled and groaned, whatever, but we do like a mile run and then we do push-ups and all these different kinds of things, calisthenics. And this is day 3 of it. And they're starting to get used to it. But yesterday, they were both really sore. I couldn't stop giggling because they were doing push-ups and Bailey's just like, my chest. I'm like, push through, Bailey, you can do it. So she found a different way to do it. She put her knees down. The point of it is that still do it, but find a solution that works for you. It's going to suck, right? It's just like I use the analogy here of getting in shape. It's hard, especially like a leadership role. There's a personification, especially in the West, that you're supposed to be a certain way. You're supposed to look a certain way. You're supposed to act a certain way. You're supposed to have it together all the time. I think the cool part about society today is we're realizing more and more that that's stupid. The 80s image of like a boss is everything is dumb, and that an actual really good leader is someone who doesn't necessarily always have the answers, but is willing to find them, is going to push through, is going to be there to support you, to grow your career, and also understand that you have to be agile. You can't just, this is the way we've done it, is not the answer. You've got to find a better one. I think that's what usually when we go into these shows, we each have 3 to 4 different answers. So that's 6 to 8 answers that we give on how to deal with different situations. That alone, I think is fun. And we complement each other's answers, but I don't think we've ever said, you stole my answer. We piggyback nicely on those topics.
Yeah, there's a couple times when you will bring up things that I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about that point. Or you'll bring up things and I'm like, damn, that's a good point. Or there'll be times when like I've been wanting to bring up a point, but it hasn't quite fit yet into the discussion. And then you'll bring it up. I'm like, yes, see, you transitioned perfectly right into where I was going.
A high five. Oh, crap. A high five.
I did it too. We're out of practice. We haven't done the side 5 in like a while.
See, but that's the solution. We thought we had it down. Like I tried to be so sly and I was so off. So that just proves that even in the moment, you're going to make mistakes sometimes, but you laugh it off, you push forward, and you have a good partner with you. And I think that's the part that I really love about this the absolute most, is that it's fun to do these things. I never wake up we have a typical day, but sometimes it varies. And I never wake up and go, shit. Like it's a nice way to start my day. And I enjoy these a lot. I was like, let's keep going. And usually when we end, it's always like, crap, I didn't get to everything. It's fun that's where we end up every time. It's not like looking at your watch going, it's only been 5 minutes, Blake. I think we're done. This thing has legs.
I feel the same way. And I'm always like, man, there's so many topics. There's so many discussions to still have. I never feel like we are running out of topics or struggling in any kind of way with it, which is really cool. But I also think it's awesome because over the last, I would say the last year and a half, there's been a shift happening. But over the last couple months in particular, there's been a major shift in content and like what people are discussing and all that stuff. And I think it's cool that we're part of that wave. Because it, like, my biggest thing this year has been to focus on impact. And I've always said that I wanted to create and tell stories that got people talking. And that is a theme in all of my content, all of my writing, all of my filmmaking, even my social media stuff it's a theme. But what's cool is this is fully falling into that. I'm achieving that goal of continuing to make content that gets people talking and continuing to make that impact. And it's cool that we are both a part of that. So thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask you, because you're going to go, what the hell does that have to do with anything? But have you seen the Barbie movie?
No, I haven't. I have very mixed feelings about watching it, but I know a lot of people said it's good.
All right. So I had no expectations going into it. It's probably nothing like you think it is. It has really good messaging. It is hysterically funny, and it has a ton of heart. That's all I'm going to say. I had no idea. Anyways, I was blown away. Like, I really thought it was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I love the messaging behind it. The opening scene is probably so iconic. It's going to be around for decades. People will review it because it's just so hilarious. Like how it even starts out and the concept of it. You're just like, okay, I get this now. They're never going to take themselves too seriously, and they never do. But the point of it is that at one point, Ken, everyone's a Ken, you know, all the guy characters are Ken, but Ryan Gosling is Beach Ken. And he's so funny because he's not lifeguard Ken, he's Beach Ken. And so he doesn't know what Beach Ken even means. He's like, but I'm Beach Ken. I don't even know what that means. You know, like, is there going to be a beach there? You know, he's always asking these questions. And it, to me, it kind of personifies this show in terms of there is no, like we had talked about a second ago, there is no singular answer. There's no particular perfect thing. And what's fun about that movie in particular is, and what I relate to this podcast is, it shows you the insanity of so many things that people believe that you take for kind of granted. And you're like, that is insane. I don't want to give anything away because there's some great plots things to it. But what Ken comes up with is hysterical because he thinks he's like revolutionized. And you're going, we do that in our society. It's hilarious. Like, it's so wrong and it's so funny. And I think that what we do here is we call that stuff out in a fun way that's relatable like that. So it's not saying, hey, you're wrong. It's saying there's a better way to do this. When we came up with our tagline, I love the tagline, right? The not so subtle truth about success and the art of sucking less in the pursuit of it. Like, when we came up with that, it was like one of those moments I'm like, all right, if nothing else, that alone is awesome.
I love our tagline. I love our podcast name too. You really nailed it on that one because I was like, it needs to embody these things, but I don't know what to call it. Titles are not always my jam. I don't know why. I think I get too caught up in actually, no, I do know why. It's because most of my stuff is long-winded. I tend to write series or like long stuff. I don't tend to write short stuff. That's why.
And see, I'm the opposite. I love the quick boom, 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 boom thing. And so I think it's also what makes this fun too, because you bring out longer answers in me that are fun. Because usually I'm just like this. Okay, I got to explain this a little bit more. So I always keep that in the back of my head. But I don't actually remember. Did I come up with the title of this?
You did, because the original idea I had was already taken. And the only reason I had that idea in the first place was because the idea for the podcast came from a television pilot that I wrote about trying to make it in the industry. And so I wanted to like debunk the myths of success was one of the themes, but I didn't know what to call it because making it had already been taken, and Rolling with the Punches is the pilot episode name, but that doesn't really fit for a podcast. So I was like, I don't know what to call it. And you literally, I swear, you didn't even have to think about it. You were like, what about this? And I was like, boom. Like, it was just, no, what about this? Like, giant bomb goes off. Oh, no big deal. Like,
obviously I had my Wheaties that day. I was good. Well, I needed an ego boost, so thank you. No, but I think the title's fun. It was funny because I shared it with my, I think it was my mom when I was traveling back a couple weeks ago. And it was funny because she hadn't seen the show yet. She looked at it and she goes, you spelled, I can't even say this right. You spelled success wrong. I'm like, Mom, look at it again. And she goes, suck. Oh, Okay. But she kept like, you could tell her, she looked at it for a second and she looked at me. She looked at it and she's like, I, did this is out there? You published like you spelled it wrong. I'm like, oh God, mom. It was one of the funniest moments I've had with her in like a long time because she was trying to be supportive, but then you could see in the back of her mind, like, this is out there. It's out there and you spelled it wrong. I'm like, that's it. Look at it again. Sucks. Oh, okay. I like it. She goes, that's really clever. I'm like, maybe too clever. Maybe we have to be careful about that.
Well, I will say anyone who points that out, they point out the successful part or the success part, but not the full part, which cracks me the hell up because successful is not spelled full.
1L. We have two letters on. You know, that's what we need to do. Is we have a challenge out here. What two things are wrong with our name? There's two letters out of place that are excess of what they should be. Find them.
This is like those, what is it? Where's Waldo? You know what I'm talking about? Like I don't know if they make those types of books for kids anymore. I used to love them when I was a kid, where you have to find all the little things.
So I love those too. We have one, I think, but my kids love it. You know what Pirate's Booty is from Trader Joe's or whatever?
Why is it? It's a chip, isn't it?
It's like a chip, but it's more like I think love the term. Like this is how processed it is. It's like a puffed cheese product, like one of those things. You're like, holy crap, this can't be good for you. But anyways, the back of the bag is really funny because it's like a interactive like map thing where you can find stuff. And so they have, probably no exaggerate, 30 different things you can find. And some are really easy, like a dolphin or whatever. But sometimes the anchor is really hard to find. So it's really funny. Like whenever I get it, I'm like, all right, the first one to find this gets this. And they'll be searching, found it. No, you didn't. All right, next, so I think it's very beneficial in life to have those kind of things to keep you on your toes.
That's true. It helps you pay attention to little details, which can easily get overlooked, especially as you get busier and older.
Absolutely. Kim the other day was talking to me and she referred to me jokingly as old man. And I was like, you're dead to me, Kim. I was like, Kim.
Well, it was funny. My sisters, this last birthday, they were like, man, you're getting old. They're saying all this stuff because they're like, 19, 18, 20, that range.
Yes.
And I looked at them and I started laughing and I go, I'm timeless. And I walked off and they were like, got them thinking, they were like, wait a minute, what?
Own it. Own it. So I'm going to do a high five frontal. There we go.
I do have a funny story actually about age here for a second. So
please go for it.
I was helping my mom the other day and she was talking to one of her clients because they drove past us or whatever. And they're older. And they were like, oh, is this your daughter who was playing volleyball in high school? As in thinking I was my sister who just graduated from high school.
I was going to say, yeah.
And I said, no, I'm like twice her age. And they were like,
you're like, yes, thank you. Yes. I will tell you, it makes me feel good. We have a mutual friend of ours who is 2 years younger than me. He really did not believe it for a long time. I mean, I've known this guy for probably 5 years, and he never accepted the fact that I was older than him until he went to my birthday last year and was like, pulled me aside and goes, are you really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, God damn it. So Blake, that's how you know you win.
Well,
that's success.
Sometimes it's awkward though, because like the other day, another one of my mom's clients drove by and she's talking to my mom about something. And then she's like, yeah, I have to go to my dentist appointment, blah, blah, blah. But, she has a teenage son and he wears cowboy boots. My mom's like, what? And then she realized that she was referring to this high school kid because she thought I was in high school. And I was like, oh, that's uncomfortable. No. No.
That is a weird moment. That is.
She was like, yeah, that won't work. She was like, why? And she goes, she's the oldest. And she was like, why? My mom had to flat out tell her my age. And she was like, oh.
She's like, listen, she likes to be Mrs. Robinson, but not on Tuesdays. You have to wait till Fridays. Yes.
Well, one of my friends in California, when I was working for him, he was probably like 25. And he always liked women who were a little bit older than him who had kids because he always wanted a big family with a bunch of kids. So one day we were doing this shoot and we hired this one little boy because he looked like the mini version of him, like if he was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
Well, that mom apparently looked at him and said, "Oh, you got money if you're a YouTuber." And would not, like, we literally had to separate her out of the room because she would not leave him alone. Like, it was bad. And after that, he started dating women the same age as him.
Yeah, that's not hot. Desperation's never hot. Just FYI. Like, that is never a thing.
Oh, it made the entire crew uncomfortable. Like, she was just like, "Hey," and she'd like try to sit like all like, it's like, oh my God. It was like one of those movie moments that should never happen in real life. And it's so incredibly uncomfortable and you feel like just embarrassed for them. But she clearly was not embarrassed.
That's so even awkward. Worse. That's totally awkward. And it's creepy.
Well, and the worst part is when he first met her, he was like, "Oh, she's pretty." Like,
of course, but
that changed.
I was going to say that killed it for him. At that moment in time, I'm sure he was like, "Oh, great. She's a stalker. I don't need a fatal attraction moment here. Yes, we're done." One embarrassing moment with age that happened to me was probably, I think it was like my junior year of college. I came home for Christmas. We had a bunch of friends over, like my mom invited a bunch of people over, and she randomly told one of the moms I thought they were hot while I'm there. And I'm like, she's like, "Oh yeah, Justin," and this whole time in the back in my mind, I'm like, yeah, she is hot, but maybe I have a chance. Now you killed it, Mom. Like, now you killed it. And I did not ever have a shot, but it was so mortifying to me because we're sitting there. It was like right after the Christmas party. So it was later in the evening and we're all just kind of sitting around hanging out. And my mom goes, she starts giggling and they're like, "What are you laughing about?" "Oh," because she was going through this whole crisis of, am I still hot kind of thing. And she's like, "Oh, Justin thinks you're really hot." And I'm like, "Mom, devastating. And then, of course, even to this day when I see her, she's like, "Do you still think I'm hot?" I'm like, "Oh, God."
Oh, that's awkward.
It's totally awkward. It was so, she thinks it's the funniest thing on earth. She's going to tease me about it till she dies. Like, "Oh, you thought I was hot?" I'm like, "Oh, God, stood up." Like, no. Oh, so if you're a parent, don't do that to your 20-year-olds. Please don't do that. It still brings back, a little PTSD. I get like a weird jut with it. But Blake, this was another great episode. Thank you very much.
It was a great episode. Thank you, Justin.
And it's fun to, kind of go behind the scenes. I can't wait to see where we take this next. And more importantly, I hope we gave you guys a little bit more look into kind of who we are as people and the genesis of the show and hopefully as much fun as we did.
Yeah. And here's to another great group of episodes.
Another 15.
At least. Well, Justin, as they say, all good things must come to an end.
Alas, they must. However, this isn't the end because next week, same time, same channel, we drop another episode.
So get excited because we're going to be diving deeper into all the topics of the not so subtle truth about success and
the art of sucking less in the pursuit of it. So join the conversation below and don't forget to subscribe.